Hey guys, just wanted to share something really quick. It's to do with arrow flight. There's two tools that we use to check for arrow flight. One being paper tuning, the other being Bareshaft tuning. Um, why do we need to check for arrow flight? Well, ultimately, we hunt, and ultimately we use fixed blade broadheads. With fixed blade broadheads, you have the blades on the front, and they can actually act like steerage in the front of your arrow, which you don't want. All the time you want steerage on the back end of your arrow. That's why you have these fletchings on the back. So what we try to do is we try to get our arrows flying as perfect as possible. If we get our arrows flying as perfect as possible, then when we put on a broadhead on the front, whatever we put on the tail end should help stabilize it in the end. Another thing too is that we don't have the luxury to practice all the time with broadheads. It's too expensive, you know, it rips targets apart. I would say 90% of the time we shooting our field points into our targets. Local ranges don't even allow for shooting broadheads into the targets. So we need to have our broadheads to hit exactly where the field points are. If we're shooting field points and we're practicing with field points, we need to make sure that the broadheads hit where the field points are hitting. Not only that though, if you got a perfect flying arrow with the broadhead at the end, you'll get much better penetration. Quick example, you know, sometimes you see some arrows flying sideways or up and down. When it hits the animal and it's flying like this, the penetration is not as good as if you have it clean flying and straight. Okay, so let's start off with paper tuning. One of the big advantages to paper tuning is the fact that you can do it in a small area like this. It's not the tell-all, but it gives me a good indication of where I'm at. So I took my wife's bow, set up everything, you know, second axis, third axis, did a walk back, center shot, everything's flying pretty well. But now I need to check for my arrow flight. And so what I've done is I've set up the paper tuner, and I found that 6 feet from the target to the paper, to me, gives the best reading. I've tried, you know, closer, I've tried farther, and what I'll do is I'll remember how the paper tunes look, and then I take it back into the field and I see which two relate to each other, you know, the real world application to this paper. I guess ultimately if we had like a real high-speed camera, but we don't have the money, so I have to trust the paper. Make sure that your bow has everything on it that you're going to hunt with. Remember, if you're going to shoot the quiver, you're going to shoot a full quiver, you're going to shoot this stabilizer, make sure everything in the field is exactly how you're going to shoot it. For me, most times that one arrow is gone. This one arrow is the one that I'm going to hunt with. So I have 4 arrows. So I'm going to start 6 feet back, and I'm just going to run, take a shot right through the paper. Okay, so we shot through the paper. This is actually ideally what I'm looking for. I'll mark it so if you're not sure. So this is where the arrow entered, and if you see these rips here are the feathers passing through. So you can see that it's a perfect, what they call a perfect bullet hole. Okay. You may also see something that looks like this, where it entered here and then the arrow actually kicks to the left, or it could also kick to the right. My bad, we're doing a little opposite here. I'm looking at it differently. Okay, also you could have one look like this, where it breaks through the paper, kicks knock high. Okay, it can also go the opposite way and kick knock low. Okay, so you can have left, right, up, down. Most times when it kicks left to right, it's a spine issue, or it could be like you're torquing the bow, and sometimes it could be your arrow rest. There's a lot of things that you got to think about and things that you want to try. That's why you have to have good form, and you have to also know what you're trying to read into. This knock high or knock low could be the knock, or it could be how you're gripping the bow. You could be heeling it, or you could be putting way too much pressure in the throat, either or. That's why this is one tool that I use. It's not the tell-all, but it kind of gets you in the general area. So how does paper tuning relate to broadheads? If you see in this picture, let's take this one for example here. This arrow entered the target here and it kicked knock right. When it kicks knock right, your arrow will tend to pull more towards the left. Okay? When you have fletchings, a lot of times they'll help correct, so it may kick, but then it'll actually end up going relatively straight. But now what happens is you screw on a broadhead, kicks knock right, it tries to self-correct, it will have a harder time self-correcting than it did the field point. So your field point might end up here, and the broadhead has a harder time fighting, so it'll end up a little to the left of the target. Whether this is true or not, I'm not sure, but this is what I've seen over the past years of tuning, and that's why I like to paper tune. It will also mimic Bareshaft tuning, and that's why we also want to show you how Bareshaft tuning, because that's more real life shooting at a target, at a distance, and showing the results.
And then what knock high does?
Okay, so even knock high, it'll do almost the same thing. Coming out of the bow, it'll kick up, and then the tendency is to try, it'll kind of fly down, but the feathers will help stabilize and help correct. Now again, with the broadhead, it kicks up, and it wants to correct, but it has the guidance also in the front, so it can't correct as well as the field point. And we primarily use fixed blades, we don't use expandables. So these are designed to have a little fin, so we need a perfect bullet hole every time. So next up, I want to shoot a Bareshaft through paper. One word of caution with Bareshafting though, if you don't have any experience right now, please wait until we do other videos on how to do it step by step. This can be really dangerous because you don't have any guidance on the back of your arrow. Okay. So what I want to show is how the paper will relate to the real life in Bareshaft and ultimately end up with us putting on a field tip broadhead and shooting it similar to our field points. Okay. So you notice this is the Bareshaft through paper. It kicked minimally down and to the left, so it ain't perfect, but it's pretty close. I personally would be happy with this paper tune with a Bareshaft, no guidance at all at 6 feet. Okay, now that I set up Stacy's bow, at least I can show you guys what I do. Very similar, but with a recurve instead. Okay, so we'll do the exact same steps. Okay. So if you notice here, here's my arrow, and here's the fletch. Pretty good. It ain't perfect, little knock high. I honestly feel that one is my grip, so I affected that flight on this one. So now with the recurve, can be a little different. Now let's say we take the same tear for example, where the knock is kicking to the right. Primarily with a right hand shooter, it means if it kicks knock right, that the spine of the arrow is too stiff. For me, I don't like to build up my rest or anything. I like to always tune my arrow. So there's a lot of things that you can do to soften the arrow, stiffen the arrow, to play with spine, to fix your knock right or your knock left. Knock high or knock low, again, knock point, knock position. Also, how you hold the string or how you hold the bow handle can also have an effect on knock high and knock low. So we headed down from my garage. We did the paper tuning. Now we're gonna do some Bareshaft tuning. For compounds, a minimum of 20 yards. 20 yards, if you can get that Bareshaft to impact the same as your fletch shaft at about 20 yards, that's a really good measure. So what we have here is a Bareshaft. I left the quills on, and actually these are little longer quills because I wanted the same total weight as the amount of fletch that she uses. So it mimics the amount of weight because you want everything to stay relatively the same. Okay, so as you can see, minimum of 20 yards. Stacy shot her Bareshaft, so no fletching for guidance, and it shot. I thought that was a pretty good shot. What we'll do now is we'll try to show you guys the relationship between field point and broadhead, but we'll drag it out farther. Let's maybe try 30, maybe 40. Let's see what we can do. Okay, so now we drug it out to about 40 yards. We're going to shoot the fixed blade broadhead first. On the back end we got 3-inch fletches. Your pins are set right now for field point, so it will show the accuracy of a field point. Plus we'll also follow up with a field point to show you the difference between the two at 40 yards. Okay, so she pretty much almost hit the tee that I used to put the balloon in. That was a nice shot with her broadhead. And like I said, we didn't adjust these pins. These pins were set. It's a newer bow and it's set for field points. But now we'll follow up with a field point. Oh, awesome shooting, Stacey. Awesome shooting. Okay, guys. This is great. I love it when this happens. She put that field point right next to her broadhead at 40 yards, 3-inch fletching. Okay, this is for your trad guys. Bareshaft. This is a modified Bareshaft. I left about 1 inch of feather on. It helps a little. It gives a little guidance, but you can still really tell if your arrow is flying straight. Also helps because I use it as an alignment, as a second anchor for myself. Okay, now we'll try the broadhead. I have a 2-blade broadhead on there. Okay, that was the broadhead. Finish it up with the field point. Okay, so as you can see, it ain't the best, but for my shooting, my recurve, that's kind of what I like to see. All 3 of them grouping the same. It tells me that if I get my Bareshaft flying good, my broadhead should fly good. They're all in the general vicinity in a kill area at an average hunting distance for me. I can do better, but at least it gives an example of what we're trying to do here.